Okay, so those are the prerequisites. All of that must be in place already inside of the person for them to be able to deal effectively with the inconvenient realities, to deal with them with integrity. So back in 2016, when the angels and godly presences were going through this assessment of what does it take to get someone to do what the situation actually calls for in these eras of inconvenient reality, all these situations occur where we need to search for truth. We need to figure out what just happened there. Our dead friend Carmen was really good about that. She was excellent at saying, what just happened? And then we would work through it. She was a good friend.
That's right. This was before she was dead. She would say, let's work through it.
It was before she was dead.
Yeah.
She was better at it before she was dead, showing that the body actually was a significant contributor to that discipline.
That's right.
Which is interesting and not what the rule book says should happen.
No, that's true.
The rule book says all good things come from the soul, all troubles come from the lives. But when observing what happens when a soul and a life diverge, we're able to see who was actually providing what ingredients.
That's
and
true.
If the discipline diminishes inside of the soul after they leave the life, then the life was the one contributing the discipline.
Yeah, that's true.
In Carmen's case, that was true. So, possible ingredients in each situation is recognizing what it feels like, that jump call feeling that we need to figure out what just happened. The call to search for truth, the call to dissect the experience and say, wait a minute, that is what it looks like superficially, but what is really going on underneath that in the deeper layers? So first recognizing that feeling of, wait a minute, we need to dig into this. And then being willing to see the inconvenient realities, because often people just don't want to see it.
That's true.
And people in all dimensions, for example, we often see the camera just blurring when higher powers don't want to see what's actually going on in the depths. They don't want to see how bad things are. And sometimes we will have the assignments to speak with various and sundry people, and their guardian angels are so sure that it's a good person, and then we speak to them, and the data doesn't really line up with that person actually being a good person.
Exactly.
It more lines up with them being in it for themselves.
Yup.
And then often the guardian angels struggle to come to terms with that. And how am I exactly like that?
Right.
You know, we have so much wishful thinking, all of us. We want things to be different than they are. Pan was wonderful about this. He would say, yes, we're all very upset about it. Now, what are we going to do? So then the next ingredient necessary in the inconvenient situation is curiosity as to how to solve the inconvenient situation.
That's true.
And that is where the previously identified list of choices began. Trying to get unstuck, we uncover potato, which is the series of choices that takes us from an inconvenient reality to living in integrity within that reality. And first, curiosity, just to be curious, and curiosity is a choice. Sometimes people say, oh, well, I'm not curious. And curiosity is a home project, and it's a choice that we can make in any moment, and that we need to make over and over and over and over again to choose to be curious. And when we're living in the world inside of a toxic society, it doesn't really work to live in those toxic societies, because the barrage of untruths and lack of integrity is too intense. When we're living a life apart, the lack of integrity moments at least have a little bit of breathing space between them, and so they stand out a little bit more.
Exactly.
It's not just this hum of lies and cheating and bullying and stealing. So having curiosity is a choice that is essential. And then to create an attitude of experimentation when we notice something inconvenient that just happened, to say, why did that happen? And then to run little experiments. If I do it this way, will that happen again? If I do it that way, will it happen again? Sorry. What does it take? What combination of events led to that inconvenient outcome, and what combination of events will lead to a more effective outcome?
That's right.
So far, so good?
So far, so good.
So far, so good. It's still the assignment, or I'm wrong. They're still saying there's the go on hand.
Go on
hurry,
hand.
hurry. So step number 3 of potato. Potato is the series of choices that takes us from an inconvenient reality to living in integrity within that reality. Step number 3 is choosing to use events of life as motivation to do what the situation actually calls for, to do what is ours to do. Not using events of life as excuses to avoid doing what is ours to do. Use events of life as motivation to do what we're supposed to do, not as an excuse to avoid doing what we're supposed to do. And it's just a choice.
That's
do
true.
what is ours to do. We can choose to be motivated to use all events of life. Everything that happens is motivation to step it up and stop the destruction in a fair and just way. There have been other sessions that have been highlighted. Call to action is a series. It begins with call to action, and so that's where you could go for answers like that. So step number 4 of potato, this is really important. Not worrying about what we can't do, but doing what we can. Arthur Ashe said, start where you are, use what you have, do what you can. And we have found that that works very well and is actually essential. And the angels and godly presences, moreover, are saying, you guys have got to do that.
That's
start
true.
where you are, use what you have, do what you can. Don't worry about it. Don't get hung up about what you can't do. Do what you can do. You can do something. Get going. And then, when we get going, taking actions to build commitment,
That's
step number
true.
5, it's actually the act of taking actions that builds our commitment, and then we take more actions, and that builds the commitment more, taking more actions, that builds the commitment more, and then the moment comes where we actually feel like all the chips in, committed to fulfilling the specific assignment that stop the destruction in a fair and just way, in some way, shape, or form. And we say, no, I'm in on this. I'm really not backing down.
Yeah.
And that moment of commitment happens over and over and over again. And it's a choice every time. Every time it's a choice. And don't wait for somebody to do this for you. We used to have a client who we really very much enjoyed working with.
Yeah.
But he didn't want to do what he was supposed to be doing with his life. And the last several sessions, he said, he asked if the angels could make him willing. That was his intent for the session. And willingness is a home project. We've got to choose it. It's a choice. We can choose to be willing. So now we're coming to the last step of potato. So by now we have curiosity, we have an attitude of experimentation, we're choosing to use events of life as motivation to do what the situation actually calls for. We're not worrying about what we can't do, but we're doing what we can. We're taking actions to build commitment, and we actually now feel the commitment. And now we just keep going. We keep acting until the soul plan is accomplished, taking selfless, courageous courageous actions on behalf of the greater good to stop the destruction of planet Earth at humanity's hands using tools sent in by the spirit world, and to stop the destruction in a fair and just way. And then the summary statement is that testing potato for ourselves is the only way to prove to ourselves that potato actually works. But we have tested it, and we know for ourselves that it does work.
That's true.
And our saying that is completely unconvincing to anybody, because the only way for you to know that it works is for you to actually test it.
That's true.
So there's this habit of long-term thinking, habit of taking responsibility, habit of looking for the gifts, habit of thinking of challenge as a good thing, not a bad thing, habit of learning and improving, a habit of choosing a good attitude, a habit of thinking multidimensionally, and having effective motivation, which right now all life on earth is dying.
Yeah.
That's motivating.
Yeah.
Recognizing that feeling of, wait a minute, we need to look at this more carefully. Being willing to see the inconvenient realities,
Yes,
actually
true.
acknowledge them. And this is a big deal, and
Yeah.
it's tough interdimensionally. Curiosity as to how to solve the inconvenient situation. The attitude of experimentation, trying various ways of solving the inconvenient situation. Choosing to use events of life as motivation to do what is ours to do, to solve the inconvenient situation, to solve the big problems of our times, to stop the destruction in a fair and just way. Not worrying about what we can't do, but doing what we can. Taking actions to stop the destruction in a fair and just way. Taking those actions builds commitment. Commit over and over again, and then continue to take actions to stop the destruction in a fair and just way until the destruction is over or we have died trying.
That's true.
And the only way to prove that it works is to try it. And to try it with the intent to excel, to do
That's
what
true.
they say to do, when they say to do it, the way in which they say to do it, as if we intend to excel. And nothing else is actually trying it. Everything else is a lie. So this is what the angels and godly presences responsible for planet Earth have said about how to live inside this inconvenient reality with integrity. How to live with integrity inside this container of a very inconvenient reality of our species destroying all life on Earth. Our species and our society. And now, what do we do about it? Does this answer the question?